Hi everyone, I am here with a review of violin lesson number 3, and this week was all about using our left hand to create new notes on the D string. So before we even look at the homework, let's just take a minute to practice playing those new notes that we learned. So if you have your violin, take it out. If not, pause the video and go grab it because we are going to do some playing together right now. So we have our beautiful posture that we've been working on in the last 2 lessons, and this week we're only going to be playing on the D string. So for your right hand that's doing the plucking, it's actually going to be quite simple. You're playing on the same string the whole time. The thing that's changing now is your left hand, the fingers. And remember, when we play a note, first of all, let me show you from this angle here. My thumb is just relaxed right over here. It's just touching right over on this side of the fingerboard or of the neck of the violin. I should not see thumbs up like this. A lot of times people like cradle it in this part of their hand. That is not going to be helpful when we try to use our fingertips. So we're going to just have the very top of our thumb touching the neck of the violin. And when we play, as I said, we're going to actually use our fingertips. So your fingers should not look like this. They should look more like this. You're using the fingertips. And in fact, we're kind of trying to make like a circular shape with our hand. So thumb's nice and relaxed over here, and we're going to have 1, 2, and 3 fingers on the D string. Make sure it's really important that your fingers are on the D string and not a different string. So going up, if I play with no fingers down, I have the note D. If I put 1 finger down, it becomes the note E. 2 fingers is the note F sharp, and 3 fingers is the note G. Now, everyone should have 3 stickers on the fingerboard on this black part right here, showing you where to put your fingers. You're going to notice that the space between your first and second fingers is much bigger than the space between your second and third finger. That's because from F sharp to G is something called a half step. And you don't really need to worry about what that means right now, but what you do need to know is that means your fingers are pretty close together for those 2 notes. So let's play those notes one more time. Get ourselves all nice and set up with our left hand. No fingers is D. 1 finger is E. Little space to F sharp. And then really close with our 3rd finger for G. Okay, so now that we have that down, let's take a look up here at our lesson book. And I'm in this What's New box that I always like to look at. And it says new notes, G, F sharp, and E, fingered with 3, 2, and 1 fingers. So those are the notes we just played. You might be thinking, we already knew a note G and we already knew a note E. Those are 2 of our open strings. And that is true. However, these is a different G and a different E. So the musical alphabet only has 7 letters. Eventually, we're going to start repeating notes. So this G is different than your open G string, and the E is different than your open E string. So we know how to play these notes, but now we have to learn how to read them on the staff. So if you look right here, we have a staff with our treble clef, and here's the note G. It shows 3 fingers. That's what we just learned. And you can see that the note G is always going to live on this second space. So anytime you see a note on that, second line, anytime you see a note on the second line, you're going to know to put 3 fingers down on the D string. Then we're looking at F sharp, and we see that it's in the first space. So anytime you see a note in that first space, you're going to put 2 fingers down on the D string. Okay, this little symbol over here is the sharp sign. We'll see in a minute that sometimes there isn't a sharp sign next to the note. It's in something called a key signature. But I will tell you, excuse me, right now that we're only going to be playing F sharps for the first little while of playing violin. So don't worry when you see an F, it's an F sharp for now. And right here is E, that bottom line. Anytime you see a note on that bottom line, you know to put 1 finger down on the D string. And here's that reminder: use the tip of your finger, and your left hand is kind of like a circle. So I'm going down to number 10 here, which was the first exercise in our homework. It's called G and D tune. This tune just uses the notes G and D. And remember, we learned this week the new G note. So we're not playing our open G string. We're playing the note that's 3 fingers on the D string, and that will create the pitch G. So let's go through. Here's that second line that we were saying, anytime you see a note living on that line, that's 3 fingers on the D string. Let's go through and read the note names, and then we will play it together. So here I go. G, 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 rest, G, rest. D, 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 rest, G, rest. G, 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 rest, D, rest. D, 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 G, 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 rest. Good, so let's play this together. Now, one tip that I will give you is, we're starting out with a bunch of G's, that's 3 fingers on the D string. When we go to open D, you have to take your fingers off. But a lot of people will take their fingers off like this, and then you have no clue where they need to go again when it's time to put them back down. I like to do something called helicopter fingers or hover fingers. So I'll show you from this side, it's a little bit easier to see. When I take my fingers off, I just barely lift them off the fingerboard. And they're hovering right over where they need to go back down. So I'm going to play G, and then when I take them off to play the D, I can very easily go back to playing G. So this week at our lesson, I'm going to be looking for those hover fingers to see who's been practicing with that. So we're going to play number 10 now. I'm setting my 3 fingers down. Make sure you're pressing nice and hard so you can get a good tone from that. Get my right hand ready to pluck on the D string. Here we go with number 10. G, 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 rest, G, open to D, 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 back to G, 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 down to D, 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 G, G. Good. So if you got that, we're going to move on. If not, feel free to go back and try that one again. I'm going down now to look at number 11, F sharp and D tune. So remember I said that our F sharps for right now won't always have the sharp symbol next to them. If you look in this first measure here, the first F has a sharp sign next to it, the rest do not. That's because there is a rule in music that within one measure, that means in between like 2 lines like this, okay, within one measure, if one of the notes has a sharp sign next to it, they are all sharp, okay? So just know that everything here, all of the F's here are going to be F sharps. For right now, when I read the note names, though, I'm just going to call it F. It will make it a little bit easier to read, okay? So here we go. F, 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 rest, F, rest, D, 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 rest, F, rest, F, 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 rest, D, rest, D, 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 F, 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 rest. All right, we're going to get ready to play this one. Remember, F is 2 fingers, 1, 2. Remember those nice helicopter fingers when we take them off? Here we go. F, 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 rest, F, down to D, 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 back to F, 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 down to D, 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 F, F, F. Great. So, and you probably noticed that that one is very similar to the G and D tune. All of these exercises are basically the same thing, but we're just changing which note we're playing. So you get practice playing every note. So now we're on number 12, E and D tune. You can see this note on this bottom line is the note E, 1 finger on the D string. There is what I call a sneaky A right over here. That's just your open A string. It's kind of catches some people off guard when we get there, so I'm just pointing that out now. But let's go through and read these notes for number 12. E, 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 rest, E, rest. D, 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 rest, E, rest. E, 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 rest, A, rest, D, 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 E, E, D, rest. Okay, we're getting ready to play number 12, E and D tune, so I'm setting my first finger down for the first note, get my pizzicato hand ready, here we go. E, 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 rest, E, down to D, 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 back up to E, 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 pop over to A, back to the D string, D, 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 E, E, D. Excellent. So those are the three that I'm really hoping everyone can practice this week, 10, 11, and 12. I did say that if you were looking for a challenge, you could try number 13. And number 13 uses all four notes that we've been playing today. We have 3-finger G, 2-finger F sharp, 1-finger E, and no finger D, open D string. Over here you'll see, remember I said that there's something called a key signature that will tell us that all of our Fs are F sharps. Over here you'll see there's one sharp. This is on the F line, the top F line. That's a different F that we'll learn eventually, but that's telling us that all of our Fs that we see here are actually F sharps. Okay, so let's go through and read these note names and then we'll play it together. Here we go. G, 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 F, 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 E, 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 D, 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 rest. D, 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 E, 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 F, 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 G, 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 rest. So you probably noticed the pattern of this one is that we start with 3 fingers, we gradually take them all off, and then we add them back on. So that's kind of what we're going for with this one. So I'm setting all 3 fingers down, 1, 2, 3, and here we go with number 13. G, 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 F, 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 E, 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 D, 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 rest. D, 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 E, 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 F, 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 G, G, G. Great, so those were our homework examples for this week. I hope this was helpful, and happy practicing, and I'll see you at our next lesson.